it is my honor on behalf of AFCEA as well as the Naval Institute to introduce and welcome this afternoon's panel. I think considering everything else that's gone on for the past day and a half, we've certainly been filled with some great information, and this is going to be a super complement to that as well. Today's panel is on cyber, the joint approach to cyber. And we've all heard about who owns cyber and where it belongs, and is it a battle domain, and who fights it if it is. And in the end, it is all those things, and it belongs to everybody, including the citizens. And so I think that hearing from a panel like this about exactly what is being done to coordinate and collaborate and to try to win the war on cyber is a great addition to this conference. And I know that it will probably, considering the individuals that we have on the panel and the moderator, it's going to spark a lot of interest and a lot of discussion, because these are people who are really in the know. I've been told by the moderator, who's a retired Lieutenant General Charlie Kroom, that is all that I'm supposed to say about him. So I won't go into detail on his background. His last position was the director of DISA, where he headed up over 6,000 civilians. But right now, he is also the chairman of the AFCEA International Cyber Committee. And I have seen him engaged with a group of experts there, trying to solve those problems at the AFCEA front. And so now bringing him to this forum along with that group is just what we need. Charlie?
Thanks, Becky. Well, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing out there? You wave? Good afternoon. Yeah. We're here to celebrate cybersecurity and cyber warfare, and we've got a great panel here to do that. I've elected not to go through a long resume on each of them, because they are distinguished, they are warriors, many years of service. I was just talking to my Marine friend here, Rich, 36 years of service and still going. He's thinking about making it a career. So they're all talented and experienced. So allow me to introduce them. Lieutenant General Rich Mills, United States Marine Corps, Deputy Commandant for Combat Development and Integration. Major General Mark Bowman, United States Army, Director, Command, Control, Communications and Computers, Joint Staff, J6. Major General Steve Smith, United States Army, Director, Cyber Directorate, Office of the Army, CIO, and G6. Brigadier General Ed Wilson, United States Air Force, Director, Air Component Coordination Element, Fort Meade, 24th Air Force Space Command. And last, my friend, Vice Admiral Barry McCullough, United States Navy retired, former Commander, U.S. Fleet, Cyber Command, and Commander, U.S. 10th Fleet, presently with Lockheed Martin. Well, how about a welcome for this great panel here? Now, our task was reference cyber warfare. Are we really taking a joint approach? The missions of each military service are unique in many, many ways. However, cyber is not only essential in everything they do to complete their service missions, cyber stretches across the seams of each unique service enterprise so that they are bounded together for good or for bad. This panel will explore how each of the services are taking advantage of, or maybe falling short of, a joint approach to cybersecurity in organization, operations, training, research and development, processes, information sharing, and acquisition solutions. So we're going to warm the panel up by some short questions here. And of course, we're going to, at any time, open questions to the audience. I see microphones here. I'm assuming you just come stand there. I'll see you, recognize you. So at any time, they're not going to make presentations. They're just going to answer your questions and my questions. And that's how we're going to proceed for the next hour and 10 minutes. So hopefully, you'll have some tough questions. So let me just start up with some warm-up questions for the panel, and we're just going to go right down the line. We'll be starting with the Marine Lieutenant General. I don't want you to talk, I just want you to give me a number. How would each of you, on a 1 to 10 scale, rate the value to your own service in approaching cybersecurity solutions jointly? 10 being very significant value. 1 to 10. Rich?
7.
Mark?
10.
Steve?
12. 7. I'm just
May not be as pretty as a movie, but 10.
9.
Okay, thank you. Now, again, on a 1 to 10 scale, how would each of you, 10 being really good, rate your service in their joint approach to cybersecurity? So it's not the value of joint, but your service contributing to the joint. Rich?
8.
6.
7.
8.
10.
So rather interesting in terms of what they believe the value is of jointness and what they believe their service is contributing. So let's ask just another question. Where is the most, maybe this is sort of fill in the blank, where is the most value obtained in a joint approach to cybersecurity? Is it in joint operations, joint training, joint research and development, joint acquisition, all of the above, or name one you like? Rich?
I would say 3 of the 4. I would eliminate training. I think that training is a service-specific area. Certainly the Marines we think we should be training. Our job is to man, train, equip, and then provide to the COCOM commander a trained-up asset. We like to keep training within our own lanes for the most part. I think in the other areas, especially research and development, acquisitions, there is room for jointness that would be very, very efficient for all the services.
All of the above.
all of the above, absolutely.
All of the above. I think we get the most productivity, efficiency in operations. I think that's like any other domain. That's the key.
I'd say all of the above, and I'll add on what the general said. I think the services have each got service-specific requirements that they need to develop for their folks that are in the information corps or IDC in the case of the Navy. But when you go to operate, defend, and develop non-kinetic effects in a joint environment, you're going to have had to train together before you're going to be able to execute in essentially real time in that environment.
Okay, thank you. So clearly, you should be striking some nerves up here on the vote. So hopefully it's leading to some questions coming up, but I'll start with another one. This one may require a little more lengthy answer from each of the panelists, and we won't necessarily go in order, so if you've got something to say, speak out. From your service perspective, what is the greatest need in approaching cybersecurity jointly? And it could be under the categories we mentioned: operations, training, R&D, acquisition, etc. Greatest need from your service perspective in approaching cybersecurity jointly.
I'll start since I'm the retired guy and I can say anything I want. I think the greatest need, and I'll couch this from an operational perspective, is real-time situational awareness of the battle space. And I've been talking about this essentially since December of 2009. When I first came into this business, I walked into a space and asked where the picture was, because my background's in integrated air and missile defense. And I got, well, there's a picture of John Paul Jones on a wall. Okay, so where's the operational SA? How do you get it? Where are the sensors? And how do the operators understand the battle space? And I believe until you can get to the crux of that problem, we're going to be playing catch-up in this environment in response to attacks and penetrations of the network.
I'd offer that same opinion. I think the unique part about the Marine mission would be that situational awareness has to be pushed forward to the forward deployed MAGTF commanders that are out either afloat or ashore initially, so they can share in that both that situational awareness and that ability to reach back to facilities at Fort Meade and other places in order to bring the information forward that they need and to protect that information, obviously, as it comes forward. And Secondly, I think it's the ability of that forward-deployed MAGTF commander to employ the non-kinetic effects, if you will, of the cyber world to his support on the battlefield. I think that's the challenge that we face. Is our forces are forward-deployed, they're small, they're tactical, they're out in front, they're on the move, they're expeditionary. In order to bring that capability along with us is challenging.
I absolutely agree as well. A comprehensive cyber situational awareness for all of us, no matter where we are on the battlefield, no matter where we are in the network, we need to know what's going on in the network so we can properly position our defenses, take the appropriate offense, weight the battle where it needs to be weighted. Comprehensive situational awareness is needed by all.
I think I absolutely agree. For the Army, I think our needs go, in order to have that situational awareness, we have a lot of internal Title X work to do to be able to have that situational awareness, whether it's in the operating force or the generating force, in terms of being able to move the Army towards a joint enterprise. So if you can't pull all of your firewalls, if you can't see down to the desktop, you're never going to have that situational awareness. You don't tear down those silos of excellence that you've had in a decentralized IT structure for the last couple of decades, then we'll never be prepared to accept new technology to give us that situational awareness.
I'd concur with all my compatriots up here on the panel. Situational awareness is key. Looking at the audience, I think another great need is the agility or the speed of acquisition in the cyber arena. We've got to be able to keep pace with threats. We have to be able to field capability. The current acquisition architecture that we have in place across the DoD hampers us at times there. And so I think that's another big challenge we need to take on as a community.
So your answers caused me to deviate slightly.
If I could just add one other point, just for consideration, I think two other things that I'd be worried about is that I think one of our challenges is to educate our commanders in the field about what the opportunities in the cyber world are, both the opportunities of those who would attack his nets and get inside of his C2 and do the destructive things that they're capable of doing, and also to educate those tactical commanders on the capabilities of the cyber world to assist him both kinetically and non-kinetically in overcoming the enemy's C2. I think in many ways our forward deployed forces are ignorant of what they have available to them. I think it's a huge challenge to ensure the commanders going forward understand what that weapon system is and know how to use it and how to reach back and get it.
Thank you, General Mills. Well, your answers on situational awareness causing me to deviate from the script here. So we've got the Marines and the Army and the Navy, the Joint Staff and the Air Force all agreeing that situational awareness is their number one priority. So tell me, how have you approached it? Have you palmed for it? Have you laid out the requirements for it? Are you getting ready to implement it, or what's the obstacles there?
At the joint level, we're pushing for a joint information environment where all the services are working together. We're focusing on the programs that people already have going today so that we can affect those and shape them into an almost everything over IP environment of the future. By focusing on those programs that aim us in the right direction, we don't have to go for any reprogramming actions. We can shape the way we need to go, and in the end, we'll end up with a shared infrastructure and a shared situational awareness, as well as a single security architecture. If we're all developing our own top-level architectures and sticking them in DISA decks, it's not a joint environment that we're looking for. We're looking to capitalize on security stacks that are where we need them and not have multiple stacks owned by each of the different services. And all the services are playing in this joint information environment today. We've been to the tank 3 times at the OpSteps level this calendar year and 2 times at the 4-star level. And we got another trip back beginning of next month laying out where we're going. We're doing a use case analysis on Europe and then one on PACOM to lay it out to show how we can capitalize on other people's infrastructure and use common tactics, techniques, and procedures to operate better in a joint environment. A perfect example of operating with shared infrastructure is the STEP sites and the teleports today. DISA has the standards to which they're run, the services run them, people go to them for services. It works just fine. We ought to be able to do that with many other activities. One of the things in the joint information environment that's working real well is enterprise email. I don't want to steal any Army thunder, but by the end of next month, the joint staff will all be on enterprise email as well. And the data center consolidation efforts that are ongoing amongst the services are all pointing us in the right direction.
So to that end, from an Army perspective, I've been on enterprise email as just our first project, IT project, to move us towards that joint information environment. We are palming for those futures, and we have convinced the Army senior leadership that going towards a joint enterprise and looking at what the Army's core competencies are and divesting those IT functions that were not part of our core competencies to partners like DISA has pushed us towards that end, so that when a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine can go anywhere in the world and have the same standards using your CAC card and be able to get what you need when you need it is the ultimate goal. And now you're really talking about being joint, really being able to accept situational awareness, and that's the direction that the Army's moving.
Marine Corps is following in the same vein. We are palming, never thought I'd be able to say this as a grunt, but we have access to the cloud so that we have that joint situational awareness. As a grunt, they only knew about rain clouds, but now I'm learning about all kinds of clouds. And we are also palming Milcon construction to be able to take our headquarters, move it inside the wire, if you will, at Fort Meade, inside the cyber wire, and be able then to share in sharing information with the joint world. So both material and non-material solutions, we are putting money towards it. It's one of our big emphasis that we're placing in the POM cycle as it matures. The Marine Corps, as you know, is going down in size. We're going to drop some 20,000 over the next 5 years as we come back out of Afghanistan. And cyber is one of the only two communities that will grow within the Marine Corps. So it is an emphasis that we're placing, and we're taking a hard look at it.
Thank you. We have a question, please.
Yes, sir. Master Chief Radowitz from NCNOC. I have a question. Most of our warfighting platforms are designed around a specific mission or weapon. So what would a cyber platform look like, designed from the ground up? Is it just a building, a cadre of personnel with tools? What's the future 20 years out from now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I can take a shot at that. To me, the cyber platform is a lot like the IT branch or part of the services. It's much the same as the intel part. You grow up and you work those things and you learn them over time. There's no specific platform for the MI guys, the intel guys. There's no specific platform for the signal guys. They use the computers, and that to me is kind of a shortcut to your answer. There's not going to be a cyber platform. There will be cyber warriors that'll grow up over time, that'll end up getting trained over time. The key issue that I see with the cyber workforce is to ensure that we man up and train up at the lowest level, at the pointy end of the spear, because having a higher headquarters with all these PhD level experts putting out policy that guys can't execute on a pointy end of the spear is not going to get us the desired results. So we're going to have a comprehensive training strategy from bottom to top. What was said earlier about us making sure that senior commanders understand this, they already get the value of the network. The difference between today and 10 years ago is so drastic that it's amazing. there isn't a single senior commander that's out there today that doesn't get the value of the network, that isn't really a cyber warrior today, because he or she already had to make the decisions on what to use the bandwidth they had for. Whether to use it for intel, whether to use it for other C2 missions that they had out there, they're making those calls. They get it today. We also have a generation that we're bringing in that are IT savvy. They are digital natives. So this environment that we live in today is so much different than it has been in the past.
I look at it as a supporting arm. I think the commander on the ground will want to achieve an effect. He'll go back into his effects cell, which will have both his kinetic effects, air, artillery, surface fires, and a cyber guy. They'll decide what the best weapon system is to bring to bear in order to create that effect on the ground, which may be again, a kinetic weapon, an artillery round, or it may in fact be a cyber round doing something else. So I think I see the cyber warrior as he belongs in the operations section. He should know what the tools are that he has, his commander, like any fire support coordinator would have, and he'll select the appropriate weapon to achieve the effect that commander wants on the ground. I don't think there'll be a single platform to be delivered as much as it'll be an array, a menu of platforms that we can reach back at and be able to do what needs to be done.
And I'd agree with that. Every platform you have, and in the case of the Navy, be it a submarine, a ship, an airplane, is a cyber platform. And it's how do they plug in the network, and how can you use the sensors and capabilities in those ships and airplanes to garner the intelligence you need and to deliver the effects you need.
Well,
I guess I would.
I was going to add.
Go ahead, Ed.
Concur with the Admiral. Cyber is pervasive, it's global, and it's quickly becoming commander's business. I think that's the difference we're seeing. And I think it will just be more intense in terms of the commander's business. I understand the conference here, there's been questions about cyber in just about every form, whether it's training or doctrine or whatever. I would say that it came out of Capstone earlier this year, and every COCOM, the secretary, the chairman, every interagency head had cyber on the top, 3 things they're worried about to keep them up at night. And so when you look at what does it look like in 20 years, I wouldn't try to guess what it looks like because of the pace of technology, but I guarantee you it'll be considered a weapon system, whether it's a defensive posture, an offensive posture, and that commanders will be worried about it in a much more intense fashion than they are today. And I think that's the maturation that's going on in cyber, and we're watching that today. We're seeing that.
Okay, thank you. Admiral Brown?
Yesterday, Hoss Cartwright suggested that the best in cyber, that the best defense is a strong offense. Do you agree with that? And are you investing stronger in your offensive capabilities or the defensive capabilities for the network?
I believe the answer to that question is it's all inclusive. And it's all integrated. I mean, I understand what the Vice Chairman's saying, and he said it a lot. Offensive or non-kinetic effects generation is very important. And how can you use it to disable an adversary, whether it's his command and control, his ability to send take orders to weapon systems, or his ability to fuse data that's collected by sensors. And if you can disrupt that, you can reduce the need for kinetic weapons and the collaterals, et cetera, that go with it. The problem today is, as I looked at it, what are the measures of effectiveness? How do you know when you launch an offensive cyber tool that you've achieved the results you want? Because I would submit if you launch a cyber tool to attack an adversary, the adversary is going to figure out you got in, how you got in, and he's going to seal everything up. And so what's the real MOE? The other thing you don't know is I kept asking for what's the PK of this thing? Okay, you go develop a tool, what's the probability it's going to work? Okay, so you're executing a campaign plan against an adversary and you launch a cyber tool. If you're solely dependent on it, what's the PK that it's going to work? And I'd submit to you, we don't understand that. If you don't have the defensive ops and intelligence gathering to be able to defend your network, you're going to lose all visibility into what's going on in the adversary's space. So I think concentrating in any one area is wrong. and that we need to concentrate across the board. The other problem you have with offensive capability is where does the authorities lie? And I'd say that's a huge issue that needs debated nationally. And does it lie with the president? Does it lie with the COCOMs, defense secretary? Or does it rely with a commander that's engaged? And we need to work our way through that. At the same time, you can't work your way through the policy issues and then find out you're in a fight and say, we'll get back to you in 2 years with a capability. So you've got to develop the capability now while the policy and the authorities are worked out. But I think it's not, don't just focus in one area. You've got to focus across the board. And I think we're vulnerable across the board.
We're going to take Admiral Mackey, and then we'll come to the Marine over here. Admiral Mackey.
Most of this has been discussed. Herb just jumped on my question. Offensive cyber is a weapon. Weapons are employed by operational commanders, be it at the battalion, battle group, JTF, wing, COCOM level. How are you going to give the control of that weapon to the operational commander?
I'd go back to you, Admiral, and ask you who's the operational commander. And I don't think, I'll default to the guy still on active duty to answer that, because when I left, I can't tell you who was the operational commander that was responsible for generating those effects, and whether they were with the regional combating commanders to be delegated, or it lay with General Alexander at Cybercom, or it laid at Stratcom, or where. And so it's sort of like missile defense. If you don't give the weapons release authority to the lowest common denominator, you're going to watch the target go by while we're debating whether we should shoot at it or not. But how do you refine the tools and delegate that authority to the right level without fully understanding the tools that are being developed right now? The tool's going to get out on the network. It will probably do what you designed it to do, but then it may do other things. So it may go someplace that you didn't intend it to, or you may have to route it through some third party that you really don't want to be affected. And then what are the consequences of that? And so I think it goes back to the policy decisions and how are we going to decide to utilize these tools, and then what's the right level of delegation of authority? But who's the operational commander? Is it General Alexander, or is it... okay.
I'd agree with that, but I would say, like any weapon, though, there has to be fire support, coordination measures put in effect. And when you start, the danger in cyber, it seems to me, is that you can end up very easily shooting on someone else's target. And there aren't the clear lines that you have in traditional battle space, where you have fire support coordination lines, and you know if you're firing over those lines, who you got to clear that action with, et cetera, et cetera. Things we all know. Cyber, because of its worldwide domain, doesn't give you that same clarity of where that round is going to land, if you will. And so I think there you have to have a little bit of, there has to be some more. Well, you'd want to push it down to the lowest levels. You have to look at what effect that weapon system is going to have strategically. So I think that there are some deep questions that have to be answered about that. How do you control those fires? And again, I think back to, I look back at command and control of the cyber much like you look back at command and control of supporting arms and or special operations forces. That boundaries where they operate are not as clear as boundaries where ground forces have acted in the past. I think it's a great question. I think it's one of the really strategic questions that have to be answered over the next few years, probably at the joint level, to everybody's satisfaction.
In the COCOMs, for instance, it's a big concern. So what happens if CENTCOM has got one of the high-value targets set, and all they're waiting for is the moon to be right so they can go after them, and it's going to happen in a couple of nights? And then Cyber Command determines that there's a threat to the network, we got to shut stuff down. That decision needs to be made as a coordinated decision between Cyber Command and the supported command or it'll end up switching around to the other way. So CENTCOM is going to end up saying back to cyber, hey, yep, we understand. We've talked to our 2, we've talked to our 3, we've got a 6, an optic is getting ready to be run. We talked to the 6 about the network. We talked to our cyber support element that's down here. We all concur. We're going to do what we need to do with regard to the network, but we're not going to do it until we get done with this operation. It's got to be a closely coordinated action where we don't allow passive sensors that go off to trigger some guy sitting in Cyber Command to shut down parts of the network. That causes problems. We end up doing denial of service to ourselves if we do that. It's got to be a coordinated action. And we have to operate the network, defend the network, attack and exploit. The first 2 are about 80% of the job, typically. The other 2, attack and exploit, we're going to get all the external help that we could ever imagine before we're going to be able to go after stuff. The legal ramifications associated with it, the political ramifications associated with it, and then, as the Admiral said, what the end effects are and how far it goes and what the secondary and tertiary effects are as well are going to weigh into those decisions.
Please.
Good afternoon. Petty Officer Gothier, Sector Strategic Communications. The debate that goes on online in regards to cyber anything has a lot of ambiguity in it. People seem to confuse cyber espionage with cyber warfare, corporate espionage with national espionage. Even calling something cyber warfare kind of seems wrong to me, in that prior to computers, warfare was conducted in 4 dimensions and involved killing people to impose one nation's will on another. Now, are cyber weapons going to be able to kill people? Are we going to be able to impose our will on somebody else because we launched a virus and it forced someone to do something or they would die? So in your minds, is cyber warfare in the traditional sense, or is it something new that maybe we should define differently than traditional warfare?
My opinion, it's a traditional weapon, just that it has effects that we have never had the opportunity to use before in warfare. I think that it's a weapon that you can get inside your opponent's command and control systems. You can take those to their knees. You don't have to bomb his antenna farm now. You can get inside there very, very stealthily and take it down just as you would have had by dropping a 500-pound bomb. I think that you can be as kinetic as you want to be. I think the effects you can have on your enemy's ability to wage war against you is significant. But I think much like new weapon systems throughout history, when they've been introduced, they need to be understood, they need to be trained to, you need to develop expertise in them, and then you need to understand the limitations of how to employ them. I think that becomes a very, very valuable arrow in the quiver of a tactical commander on the ground. When I was in Afghanistan in 2010, it was valuable to me. Valuable to me because I had people there that understood it and could explain it to me in very simple terms what I could do. So I think it's a weapon system, and I think if you look at it any other way, you're undervaluing it and you're misjudging it.
But think about, the General's absolutely right. Think about how many things in our lives have an IP address today that are IP addressable, and if your enemy's medical system or his pacemaker has an IP address because the doctor wants to monitor that, I think we can kill him.
And I'll just pile on what my 2 colleagues said here. I'll give you an example. Can you kill people with it? I won't name the country, but they attempted to bring on a turbine in a hydroelectric plant remotely with a computer, and the logics didn't work right. The turbine oversped. It almost took the whole dam out. And so if you'd have done it to 2 of them simultaneously, you probably could have taken the dam out. And I'd say there you generated a kinetic effect with a non-kinetic weapon. It's a weapon.
And I think one of the interesting pieces with the weapon is it's a 2-edged sword, because it can very quickly come back at you. It doesn't require decades to develop a fighter jet and Air Force lingo or any of the other domains of warfare we fight in. A cyber weapon, in many cases, can be retooled and used against you. And so when we unleash, I think that's one of the reasons why there's an or an echelon character to the use of that cyber weapon. Not every cyber weapon's made the same. And so as we have more sensitive or extreme in terms of the effects that may be delivered, or the PK, or the collateral damage that may occur, should that be given to a battalion commander? Should that be given at the COCOM level? Should that be a POTUS decision? I think that's a key question as we bring new weapons along, these new cyber weapons. But we also have to understand that that weapon may come back in some other form or in its original form at us. And so when we talk about SCADA systems or Hartman paces, turbines and all, we've moved in this new generation of cyber in the name of efficiency from a business perspective to get more efficient, more productive. We are creating vulnerabilities. I think we all understand that. But that can be leveraged against a nation state or a company or any other form of an organization in the cyber domain. And that's why it's definitely a weapon in our cases.
I would just add one other thought, though. It is a weapon. It's not the weapon. I think there could be a tendency to overestimate what you can do with it. And I don't think it's going to replace the infantryman on the ground. I think it is a weapon in that commander's quiver that he can use to great effect. But we fool ourselves, I think, at this point if we think it's the weapon that we should. That's all we need. Is go to war in the cyber realm, and we can win. I'll leave that for smarter people than I to think through. But I would just caution. I would just caution that as we move down the road, as money becomes tighter and tighter, as decisions have to be made on capabilities to be retained and those that have to be sloughed off, that cyber is a weapon, but it's not. It is a weapon, not the weapon.
Sir, just to pile on, I think we've done a great job. There's been tremendous work by the larger team cyber to integrate cyber into the fight, whether that's with kinetic activity or other non-kinetic activity, but we still have a lot of learning to do there. There's still a lot of heavy lifting in front of us, and I think that's where the power of these cyber weapons will become very apparent.
Question from the Senator?
Sir, Bill Newland from Sonalists. At the risk of oversimplifying, General Alexander has said we need to go to a cloud-based architecture, we need to shrink the networks, we need to shrink the data centers, we need to increase virtualization, and we obviously need to increase security within the cloud to support that. Right now we have, I'm not picking on the Navy, but which I spent 30 years in, but the Navy has Next Gen coming up as a procurement. I guess my question, in view of the direction that we need to go, and I know people are making strides in that direction, but if we need to change significantly the architecture and the approach here, why isn't this a joint next generation network that is more for all the services? I guess, General Bowman, that's probably for you, sir, to start that one off. But if it's going to save us money, dollars-wise, and if it's going to move us in the right direction, when do we get started?
Actually, we're already getting started with enterprise email and with the data center consolidation that we're doing with DISA. The DISA went through in the 90s a bunch of DMRDs where they went from 191 data centers down to 18 worldwide. We went across the services when we got the tasker from OMB to figure out how many we could close. Some services signed up to close as many as 75% of the data centers that they had. The first thing that we ought to be looking at in the future, and I think everybody's looking at it today as well, is how can we virtualize stuff, how can we use other people's platforms, and how can we get there fast without degrading the operation. With regard to the cloud, we ought to go to a cloud architecture when it's feasible and operationally smart. So technically feasible and operationally smart. The question is, are you going to go to a government cloud or are you going to go to a commercial cloud? We'll go to a commercial cloud when it makes sense for us to go to a commercial cloud. We'll do the government clouds as well. And it won't be a single cloud. We had a significant discussion about numbers of clouds. That gets determined by what we're trying to do. Right now, we have a bunch of applications. In CENTCOM alone, we had over 1,000 C2 systems and applications at one time. You're supposed to be able to to configuration manage those. You can't even chase that many. So we worked with GIFCOM and necked it down, and there were 150 applications after we got done necking them down. There were some hard choices that had to be made with guys getting ready to go into the box using one application, and we told them the decision is you're going to use this one. We helped them move it over. It worked. It was a great example for everybody else to follow. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of people realize significant operational benefit and significant savings and a way to move together into a cloud in the future. That's a quick answer. Over to anybody else?
NGEN, you referenced Next Generation Enterprise Network for the Navy. I've been divorced from this for about 6 months, and my dad is time late. In the continuity of service contract, there are some avenues to do data center consolidation, virtualization, and some work to be able to move to a cloud. And when I left active duty, the Navy was pursuing several of those avenues. You referenced General Alexander. He's worked at this hard through an event called Cyber Pilot that he did in the Pacific in 2011. And it involved multi-level security, people logging on the cloud network with different credentials, and you could tell who was who in the zoo by the credentials. And I think he's taken it into the building to the secretary and the chairman and the joint staff, and I think it's going where the J6 said. When it makes sense to move to cloud architectures, we'll move to cloud architectures. We all understand it's easier to defend the cloud, so you put thin clients in virtualization rather than defend every box. But when does it make sense, and when is it cost efficient, and how do we get there? And so I think I'll speak for the Navy. The Navy's going down that path. And I know the General was trying to take that forward in a joint community, and it sounds like from what the J6 says, there's been success in that endeavor.
Mr. Grimes.
I have two things. Dick Mackey, Admiral Mackey, just reminded me to the question I think the Chief asked. Got to remind everyone, since we were involved, when the Russians went into Georgia, they prepped the battlefield with cyber, and I could tell you how they did that, but it's an indication of the future and future warfare. Estonia was almost the same thing, although they didn't put any troops on the ground. So Dick has just reminded me that. But I have another one. When we were talking about standing up, or actually prior to the Cyber Command in the building, Secretary Gates had myself and the chairman, vice chairman, which was Cartwright at the time, Alexander, the lawyers, and Chilton, General Chilton, who was the Stratcom commander. One of the discussions out of that, and we had follow-up meetings out in Strat, was this thing of electronic warfare and cyber, and how you integrate those. And at the time, General Chilton did not wish to include that in the discussions of the Cyber Command, or the beginnings of the Cyber Command discussions. Subsequently, we went out to Strat and had some pretty heated discussions with Chilton, who was firmly against putting them together. And I'm on the other side of that fence. There was another general, Air Force General Elder, who at the time was the 8th Air Force. And there was a number of people felt that operationally we needed to start to talk about that doctrine. And there is a lot of synergism there. So my question to you folks, if you had a chance to think it through, by the way, Chilton's point was that the military services each had their tactical EW capabilities, but it was not at the time coordinated, which I think one of you mentioned, with the cyber operation if you were going to do an offensive. Now remember, I was heavily involved in the offensive business before I left the building, so I just ask you about the EW question. Should these be integrated operationally? It's not something you'll do overnight. The old crows don't want it to happen, by the way, so understand that point.
Sir, I will tell you, it's good to see you again. But from the Army perspective, as we formed Army Cyber Command under Lieutenant General Hernandez, we put all of that together with our information operations and EW for that end, just so it seemed that to prepare to provide forces for the combatant commander, that you would want to ensure that you had all the tools to bear. But in terms of combining those forces or creating one military occupational specialty, we haven't figured that part out. But at least under the command of the Army Cyber Command, that's the direction that the Army's going in. Over.
The Navy combined that in Fleet Cyber Command 10th Fleet. And so the way we looked at it was, I believe, tactical ELINT on the ships and in the Prowler Growler squadrons. I believe that probably belonged to the component commanders like Fleet Forces Command and PAC Fleet. But the Op ELINT in the collection and development of the libraries to be tactically employed and the methodology to employ it, along with other effects that could be delivered through that path, that resided in Fort Meade with 10th Fleet and Fleet Cyber Command.
From the Marines' perspective, I think we had a leg up, if you will, because of our long history and use of radio battalions that gave us good tactical advantage over the enemy. Now I think we should talk about the integration of the EW, STRATCOM, and things like that. I think that takes place at the MAGTF level, the MAGTF headquarters level. It's not we're not drawing them together outside the battle space, but inside the battle space, we're pulling them together to make sure that you maximize the effects of each one of them through through planning and command and control.
And I think the Air Force would be a reflection of the Marine Corps' thought. Not organized together, but operationally we bring them together and we integrate the effects. And I think we're pretty good at that. When you look at ACC and the Air Force Space Command components that have cyber today, clearly that's always a discussion topic around the leadership table.
Thank you. Question over here, please.
Sir, Commodore Steve Chick from the Combined Joint Operations from the Sea Center of Excellence in U.S. Fleet Forces. I'd like to ask what consideration is being given to coalition partners in addressing cyber defense, and what do you think the biggest challenges of coalition operations will be?
Great question.
Well, am I glad you're here?
Cyber is going to be included in Bold Quest. The coalition participation in Bold Quest is huge and always getting bigger. We are working closely with our coalition partners. For instance, when we just had a professional development seminar on cloud computing, some of the best questions came out of our coalition members. And what we have done with our coalition guys in the organization that I'm in is we put them for Afghan Mission Network or Future Mission Network, those coalition networks. Those guys are actually working those plans, policies, techniques, procedures. Those guys are actually working, and we're working together with them. What we want to do is go forward and have an operation that the U.S. doesn't lead. One of our coalition partners leads, and we follow. And it goes on with cyber. The coordination between the folks with regard to cyber is going up significantly. The interest by all our coalition members is going way up, and it's just like everything else we got to work together with them on that as well.
I would tell you from practical experience in Afghanistan, one of the challenges you have is, of course, when 1MEF was ready to go over, we trained up and, of course, working on U.S. SIPRNet and NIPRNet, and had all of our cyber defenses up in those areas. You get to Afghanistan, you pass under NATO control, and you have to move everything to Centrics. Huge challenge, and both for familiarity, equipment, and where you decide the air gap is between the coalition nets and your own nets. So I think it's an area that needs a lot of work and needs exploration, and especially as we build these coalitions now, not necessarily our traditional partners. Some people who are more non-traditional, and you have to bring them in. You have clearance problems, you have access problems, and it gives that tactical commander on the ground things to work through in order to make sure he has clear command and control, but that he understands who's on his nets, who's inside his nets, and who has access to those nets.
Okay, far end, please.
Yes, sir. Scott Kinner, Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group. I hate to go back and look at the offensive games. We just kind of talked about it, but I would like if we could answer this question. Do we see cyber, especially offensive cyber ops, coming off the table eventually? We talked as if it's going to be something we're going to be able to do once we kind of figure it out. But when you look at the growing reliance of the world on all things cyber, are we going to reach an escalation, almost a mutually assured destruction kind of paradigm where, I tried to target this, but because you targeted this, I'm going to respond, and then we almost get to a point where it is so valuable and so inherent to everything that's being done, it actually comes back off the table because of a mutual assured destruction kind of effect. I'm not talking real world like kinetic destruction. I'm just talking about, pacemakers, power plants. The effects are so wide and varied that we don't dare take action on them because of the possible blowback for ourselves.
I'd offer a no to that because I don't think it will come off the table. I think it's going to be something we have to be concerned about from now until the foreseeable future, because I don't believe that weapon system is just in the hands of nation states. There are a lot of mercenaries floating around the world out there, guys in log cabins in the hills of Montana who can do as much destruction to you as can a nation state that decides it wants to get inside your nets. So you've got some hired guns out there that are probably just as dangerous, probably maybe more dangerous. They have no morals. They're working for money. And so I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where there's one side, two sides can come together and talk about it and say we won't do it. You may do it on a limited basis. You may do it with partners who in fact can enforce that. But there's just too many non-state actors running around out there that have the capability, I think.
And I guess to pile on, the assumption is that there's a rational actor on the other side, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so a nation state most times acts in a rational manner, but if you have a terrorist network, organized crime affiliate looking to make cash as a payment, the proverbial cabin in the hills, there's obviously levels of sophistication, but that just means that we have to be, we can't be the second in this game. We need to be the first, especially when it comes to defensive capabilities. And so I think we're kind of at the point of no return. I don't see us ever turning back. That we may elect not to employ some particular capability because of a fear of escalation. And I think that's the calculus that may take that cyber offensive capability out of the hands of a tactical commander in the field. So, that's a good point.
Question from the center, please.
I'm with the Cyberspace Training Initiative out of U.S. Stratcom, and to just your concern, General Mills, regarding informing the commanders. We're putting mobile training teams into the combatant commands right now. Since January, we're on our fourth rotation. We're going to CENTCOM at the end of June to actually look at this problem. It's very robust, and it's part of a larger U.S. Stratcom effort to train the force at the joint level. My question is, well, there's two pieces to that. One, are J6s, if this is a domain, are J6s starting to become battle space managers in the cyber domain, like operational 3s are for the more terrestrial, or air commanders are for the air component? And who is going to be the joint force trainer for cyberspace going forward? I was hoping that was an easier question. I don't think so.
Thank you for that easy question.
Policy.
Well, what my compatriots think, I would argue that the 6 is not the owner of cyber. The communications officer, I think he owns the hardware perhaps, and he's running the systems, but he's not, in my mind, the cyber guy. It goes beyond that. You really need an operator, a guy who understands the effects that the commander wants to achieve, can bring those effects together into a mosaic of various weapons and produce the impact that tactical commander wants to have. The J6 is, or the 6 in our case, is doing a lot. You know, he's managing the hardware, he's managing the systems, if you will. But I don't believe he's the guy that ought to have that dumped on him. I think he's got other things to do, and he's doing other things. I think it is an operator's world. I think the operator should own it. I think if on the staff, the cyber cell should be in the fire cell of a unit going forward. And I think that's where they belong, and that's where they should operate from. I'll leave the training piece to my compatriots.
I absolutely agree. The best successes we had at CENTCOM when I was a 6th there were working directly with the 3 to accomplish the objectives of the commander. It's the way it works. You have to know the operations that are ongoing, but if the commander gets told, hey, we got some bad stuff getting ready to happen, in my mind, he would have the 2, the 3, the 6, and the cyber dude all standing in front of him, and then ask them what's going on with regard to this particular event, what they know, what their recommendations are, then make the decision on which way to go. It's got to be a 2, a 3, a 6, and a cyber dude all working together as one. But the 6 as a battle space manager, no. And the joint training that you asked about, it's funny you should ask that because General Smith just talked to me on the way in. He said, hey, don't you think this ought to be done in a joint fashion so we could learn from each other? Absolutely agree. We do have courses that Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force guys all go to. We ought to have some of these that we share as well. But the curriculum is also real important, and we ought not to rush in and come up with something that isn't the right type of curriculum to train these guys on, because if we come out of the box and mess it up, it'll take a long time to get it right.
Please.
Rob Templeman, NSWC Crane in Indiana. I'm a security researcher currently working with Indiana University, and I have a 2-part question. First, does the body of research in the general academic community, computer science and informatics, does that benefit the mission? And the second part of the question is, what technical areas do you see that are underexplored? Where can we help more?
Can you say the first question again?
What is the general body of research in the academic community helping the mission?
Could they be doing, or are they?
Are they currently, and what could they do to help more?
You know, so much being a Title X guy on the Army staff, talking to the federally funded research and development facilities and some academia, you know, we're very interested in things that, you know, from a defensive perspective. You know, as an information assurance guy for the Army, you know, how do we take the human element, you know, out of it so that we can do things for the user, you know, so they don't have to. So we're very interested in anomaly tracking, you know, and things of that sort, so that machine-to-machine type activity, so that I take a snapshot of your memory 30 minutes ago, I take another look at it now, and what are the differences, and how can I say that that's good, that's an anomaly, and somebody ought to take a real quick look at that before it has time to, you know, if it's malware, to go out. There's a lot of discussion about typing me in terms of the kinds of activities that I do on the network today, and if somebody were to jack my CAC session and do it differently, how can you discover that without necessarily a human analyst having to be involved looking at 90 days worth of logs? So traditionally, we've been in the forensics business after the guy's already dead. Now we're trying to get in the prevention business, and what kind of technology, not just hardware, but really in the software business, you know, that business intelligence that can help us. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And what was the second one?
Just what areas do you see that are underexplored? And that partly answered that there, but if there are any other areas, specific technologies within computer science that you would like the academic community to just go out and do more work with?
I think this has to be a team sport with industry, FFRDCs, academia, and the government, because there's pockets of knowledge to get at what we all need resident in each one of those areas. It was an exercise done in PACOM's AO in 2010 that I participated in, and we brought those entities as a team to that exercise, and it was beneficial for all of us. So you get to the point where the industry, the FFRDC, and the academics can see what the operators are trying to do. And a lot of times the operators don't understand the technology or the science that may be available to go sort through the problems. And so if you can build a partnership like that, and granted sometimes the clearances are difficult, but if you can build a partnership like that, I think it's beneficial to all of us.
The other area is, as General Bowman talked about, the Joint Information Enterprises, we move to purple standards and things like that. It reeks of identity management. How are we going to identify that joint user so that you can bring my information to me when I need it? So today, our primary authentication is the Common Access Card, CAC PKI. So what's the next generation of authentication going to be? You know, in the forensics area, you know, and particularly as the services move to more of a mobile or wireless environment, which stinks in terms of security. We can't be the no in innovation, but having to use the Common Access Card is all we have today. And that's mainly in the generating force, not necessarily in the tactical side. But what's the next generation of authentication going to be?
And another area is encryption. This is not just a DoD concern about cyber. It's commercial, it's personal, it's everything. It doesn't matter what state, what country you're in, it doesn't matter at all. Better commercial encryption is something that could be, it could pay huge dividends in the end.
A couple of thoughts just to pile on. Cyber is probably the one domain that is not led by the Defense Department in terms of the pace of technology and the pace of advancement. It's being led, obviously, by the commercial sectors in most cases. So things like identity management and encryption and mobile devices, et cetera, unfortunately, the DoD doesn't set the pace for all of that. Now, we may have some unique requirements, but industry is going to set the pace. And so I think if universities pay attention to what's going on in the commercial arena when it comes to delivering capability, that's a great start. The other is, I think we can speak for all the services, our S&T centers and our research laboratories tend to have the most open and facilitate the dialogue with universities in consortiums of different types. So that's a great place to go because that's where the seed capital is going to be to get good projects started. They take the lead from the operational elements across all the services. And then the final one is there's been some great success stories, and I think when you look at all of the services, one of the challenges we're all going to face is recruiting in this domain because it's a very competitive environment. We need experts, we need subject matter experts. I think when you look at what the services are doing in terms of cyber challenges, organizations like FCA and others that are sponsoring those, when it comes to university participation, there's nothing like walking in a room and watching a cyber challenge where you've got teams going up against each other. That is just great recruiting turf for all of our services. And I think we're teaching young students in universities, high schools, even junior highs, some great skill sets. Whether they come near the service or not, the appreciation for what cyber can do for them, whether it's in a productive company environment or for national security.
I worry about capacity forward. How do we provide that forward deployed commander with what he needs? I think we're been a little bit spoiled over the past 10 years in that most of our forward operations have taken place from hardened bases, from static bases. Easy to put a lot of equipment on there, bring a lot of comm systems in that you can make secure because they're not going to go anywhere. We need to get back into a mobile environment. We need to be able to take those commanders that are moving on the ground constantly and ensure their systems are protected. I think we've increased our capacity of being able to send information forward, and I'm not sure that again, on the move, an expeditionary operation, that you can have those pipes that are going to allow you. You may have all the tools in the world, but if you can't reach back and use them, they're of no use to you. So I think we need to refocus ourselves a little bit and say we're going to get out of these fobs and COPs. We're going to move. We're going to be on the ground next time, both at sea, in the air, and on the ground. And we've got to be able to support that forward commander with the tools that he needs in that expeditionary manner. So you got to lighten up the systems. I'm talking hardware there, really, more than anything, but provide that same capacity, that same security, but with a much smaller, lighter systems.
Other than that, not much.
Got a lot of notes.
Did that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kathleen Peterson, Fleet Forces Command in Norfolk. I was intrigued by your mention of Bold Quest, and I wondered, is that the first coalition event that will flex and stress cyber capabilities at the coalition level? Also, back in the day when I participated in experimentation at TRADOC for the Army, to our dismay, not all services fully stressed capabilities available within experiments and exercises because of shortfalls within the individual services. How robust will individual service participation be in Bold Quest? Do all of the DoD services plan to engage both jointly and with coalition partners on the cyber front?
In the end, yes. We'll have everybody pushing pretty hard on the cyber. We got a crawl, walk, run on this one as we go through. We're adding modules in now and agreeing on what we should do and what we shouldn't do, what would be of real benefit and what probably needs to wait till next year. So we're not going to just be able to flip a switch and, hey, here's a Bold Quest that is 90% cyber. It ain't going to happen. We're testing out a lot of systems that having a cyber view from them of how those systems perform and interoperate is actually going to provide us huge benefit. But we're going to crawl, walk, run into this one. And Bold Quest won't be the only exercise that has cyber in it. It'll be starting to work into other exercises. Habitually in the past, when we had big exercises, we never practiced losing comms either. We just lost it by bad luck and then yelled at the six about it. But doing a denial of service, we hadn't done that in the past. I think we're going to start seeing some of that happen too, because people are very, very, very dependent on the network today, more so than ever in the past.
So is this the first coalition level event that offers this opportunity for cyber interaction?
It's the first one I know of.
Mr. Grimes?
I'd like to go back to a subject that's been touched upon a couple times, and that's the joint training or joint education. Way back, again, back 6 years ago when we were talking about cyber command, again, General Chilton says, my problem is I don't have 04s, 05s, and 06s to get right to op plans, offensive I'm talking about now. And we need a training program to do that, which is jointly, because these same folks will eventually go out into the COCOMs, because every COCOM now has an offensive cell someplace. So there's another issue that was brought up, the awareness of having some kind of awareness programs at the War College level for the commanders, those 05s and 06s going out of there, that they have an appreciation when they go to their future commands. I'm not sure I've seen an effort, unless Mark, you know something, that pulls together this jointness of people at that level. There's plenty, appears the services will have the tactical level. The guys can sit down and do what they want. but the person that has to think about the strategic, which, by the way, ends up into an op order, and some of them can be signed by the secretary, and those are not, go to the president as a finding, just like it almost operates like the nuclear business. So just curious about that human element and the training that may be on the horizon for, especially the 04s, 05s, 06 level. I'm sure you've run into that.
Panel?
One of the tasks of MAR for Cyber is to make sure that, to develop POIs and to get them into our service schools as a strand of commanders and staff officers' education, both at the captain and major level, more importantly probably at the regimental division level staffs. It's a challenge. You get squeezed into a lot of other stuff, and to convince some young major that this is important, he needs to know it, is the challenge. It's not exciting. It's not, for most people, when some of these guys get excited, doesn't go boom, But that's the challenge: is to educate our young officers so they can explain to the senior officers, this is what we offer. I think we all know, everybody in here who's been in command knows that once a commander realizes this can do something for him, he's going to use it. If he doesn't know it or doesn't see the value, he's going to push it on the shelf because he's got a lot of other things to think about. But at this point, within our own service schools, we are adding a strand of education on cyber.
On some of the joint schools, sir, there are modules on cyber. The iCollege at NDU has got courses that teach different aspects about cyber, different aspects about cloud technology and other ways in the future. I think we probably need to do a better job than we've been doing. I haven't checked with the Naval Postgraduate School to find out what they were doing there, but that's a way to better ensure that it's an elective that guys know about when they're out there at PG school, and another way to get to them.
The Navy PG school has an elective course in this, and they were looking to put it as part of the curriculum as a focus area of study. The Naval Academy is standing up a department. I don't know whether they'll call it a department or a division or what, but on cyber. The Navy War College, we were working with them to get a capability put in a War College. There's a joint course that's taught for operators down at Corey Station in Pensacola, and that is a joint course. And I think the direction was to get up to 1,400 or 1,800 graduates a year out of that. So I think all of us have recognized the holes, and we're working at it. Is it as fast as we should? Probably not, but the focus is there.
We've got one last question, and I'd ask the question to be brief. I'd ask the panelists to be brief, and then I'll come back to the panel if you have any closing remarks.
Sir, good afternoon. Mark Letter with Deloitte. Two questions, but they go hand in hand. One, are you considering social media? And to that extent, how do you advise the commander in the field so that he can best basically take action against, say, some kid with a smartphone in Pakistan who's streaming live video of stealth helicopters coming across the range?
Not that brief, panel.
We didn't hear the question.
Sorry, so are you considering social media? And then to that extent, how do you advise the commander in the field so that he can properly address or guard against some kid with a smartphone streaming live video of whether it's stealth helicopters coming across a range, Humvees rolling out a gate, going to take down a high-value target, you name it. Same principle, I guess, as Mogadishu, except instead of kids on radios or HF transmitters, now they're tweeting, to everyone live video, so you really have an understanding of what you're dealing with.
To me, it all comes down to leadership. We're responsible for what our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines do out on the battlefield. There's certain things that they know they ought not to do. There's things like you just described that commanders are going to tell them, hey, look, don't do dumb stuff. We know the technology's out there, but you're going to put your buddies at risk if you do dumb stuff like this. Don't do it. And then when it does happen, we take action against them to correct those bad behaviors.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Flipping that, how do you prevent the Pakistani kid, the the Taliban from doing that. Not our own troops. I understand we have things in place to hopefully combat that. How do you get ahead of the bad guy who's doing that?
I think we go kinetic.
Okay, panel opportunity here. We're closing out the panel. Any final comments from any of you in general on any of the questions or any point that you would like to make? I'll start with General Mills.
I would just thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to learn from my fellow panelists and from the questions that were asked. I think overall the discussion just pointed out the many challenges that we have. You know, the technical part of this is almost easier than the doctrinal part, and that's what we're going to have to wrestle with in the years ahead. But it is an amazing capability. It could add much to the commander who's forward fighting, and it needs to be understood. And it needs to be utilized. And so anyway, just thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity as well. The network has never been more important than it is today. The cyber threat has never been more severe than it is today, or it will be tomorrow and in the future. And fiscally, we're going to have constrained budgets. We will get driven into a joint information architecture. We need to go in there with open eyes, not fight it, and we'll come up with the best architecture available. Thanks.
I too appreciate the opportunity to be here. As Mark said, as we move towards a joint information environment, your services, we're moving ahead with that because it's the right thing to do and because of the tough fiscal constraints that we're going to do. But it makes a lot of sense, and it still will allow us to have the cultural differences between the services, but be able to operate much more efficiently and much more efficiently in a joint and coalition environment.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for letting me join the panel. And clearly the threat's growing. Fortunately, our capabilities are growing fast, hopefully faster than the threat. And but I tell you what, when you look at young airmen, soldiers, Marines, sailors, and you watch those young sailors type with one finger faster on a cell phone than I can type with two hands. It's an amazing thing. The pervasiveness of the technology when, you know, the average age in this room, unfortunately, is much higher than the majority of the folks that are in the services. When you watch them at work in this domain, it's pretty inspiring. And there's some untapped knowledge base there that, you know, the key is to leverage that. And so, while we've got a lot of challenges in front of us, I'm sure we're up for them when you look at the young troops we've got on the ground. Thank you.
I too would express my appreciation for the opportunity to participate in the panel. What I'd ask you to think about is the fact that Cybercom and the service components went to initial operational capability in May of 2010, and FOC, whatever that was defined as, in October of 2010. And then think about the level of discussion that occurred here today, and if we could have had that discussion prior to May of 2010. The challenges are many, the threats are great, and I'd just like to thank those folks on active duty and in service with the government for their effort they're putting forth to address the challenges that are before us, both operationally and fiscally, because they're dealing in an environment that none of us have been in for quite some time. So my hat's off to you guys. Thanks.
General Mills, General Bowman, General Smith, General Wilson, Admiral McCullough, we thank you for your time, we thank you for your talents, and most of all, we thank you for your continued service to our nation. How about a round of applause for this panel?